afternoon and welcome to Stock Market Today, sponsored by Interactive Brokers. It's Alyssa Corm here with Ken Shreve, and on the show we're going to be breaking down the chart action for ASML as well as MongoDB and a follow-up on Baozun. But first, let's take a look at the major indexes. We dropped across the board, the S&P 500 logging the worst loss. We're going to be taking a look at that chart, down about 0.7% today, while the Dow and the Nasdaq closed down over 0.4% apiece. So a down day, but what are your thoughts on the overall uptrend?
Well, it wasn't a good close because 5 minutes ago we were not where we are now. So there was a lot of selling, looks like, during the last 5-10 minutes of trading. So not a great close for the market. That's on the heels of a mild distribution days yesterday for the S&P 500 and Nasdaq. So we're at a point where when we're taking a look at institutional selling in the market, we're seeing mild signs of institutional selling. Headed into today, we had 4 distribution days for the Nasdaq and 3 on the S&P 500. We could add to that count today. So railroad stocks really weighing on the S&P 500.
After a strong day yesterday.
After a strong day yesterday, so lots to talk about.
Yes, there is. And, we've said oftentimes on this show that we would really ultimately like to see participation from the semiconductor sector in this uptrend. And today we did see some strong action from semiconductor equipment maker ASML, which gained about 6% today in heavy volume on its quarterly earnings report. It still did report year-over-year declines, but I guess not as bad as feared.
Yeah, I mean, this is a stock with a composite rating of 80, so that is kind of hurt a little bit by earnings declines and sales declines in the latest quarter and as the prior quarter as well. Right. So, but nonetheless, earnings and sales did beat expectations this time around, and the company also reiterated its sales outlook for 2019. I think the market liked that. So it reclaimed a 210.97 buy point. ASML did, and we're seeing pretty good action in the chip stocks now. A lot of selling came into the Nasdaq late. I know at one point SMH, the VanEck Vector Semiconductor ETF, was up about 0.5%. So we'll see where that closed, but that's kind of close to a buy point as well. So.
All right. Well, checking in on another name from the software sector, pivoting to a different group here, but this group has been leading this year. So we want to check in on MongoDB, which found support at a key technical level today, gaining about 6% itself after a pretty strong breakout, then kind of crumbled a little bit. Good to see support here.
Yeah. So I was talking with Ed Carson about this one, and it's a database software firm. It's not profitable yet, but you've got booming sales growth in recent quarters. I think 3 or 4 straight quarters of accelerating sales growth. But this is just a good visual example of what support at the 50-day moving average looks like. You can see over the past 2-3 weeks or so, there was a breakout over a 154.90 buy point. The stock fell about 7% below the buy point. So pretty much, sort of triggered a sell rule. Yeah. Some people may have waited for the 8% to hit, but it did find support at its 50-day moving average, and actually one of many healthy stock charts out there in the stock market right now.
All right, well, that is good to know. So with that rebound off of the 50-day line, if you did get shaken out of this stock, where would be a good place to initiate a new position? Maybe would it be this bounce off of the 50-day?
I think today was perfectly adequate because you had a little volume behind the bounce today. You had a close near highs, and again, it fell 7% below that 154.90 buy point. So we use a rule to say if a stock falls 7 to 8%. Yes. So some people may have given it a little more room, considering the 50-day moving average was right around the area where it triggered.
And it never closed below.
And it never
the 50-day.
closed below it. So I would say the stock is actionable today. But again, we're dealing with a market. We're starting to see subtle signs of distribution in the major stock indexes. Playing a little defense here, probably not a bad idea.
All right. Well, last but not least, let's check in on Baozun, following up on our discussion. Yesterday logged about a 6% loss and above average turnover. So after yesterday's pretty nasty downside reversal, extending those losses here today.
Yeah, pretty ugly. I know you and Justin talked about yesterday's negative reversal that came in very, very heavy volume, and sometimes that is a sign of a direction change for a stock, and the selling definitely slightly increased today and closed near its session low. Volume was above average again. So, this is a stock where if people bought at the alternate entry of 52.14, clearly this is unusual price action. We'd really call it abnormal price action so soon after a breakout. So cutting the stock loose here with a small loss probably makes sense.
All right. Well, Ken, you mentioned there being signs of increased distribution, and where could we go from here? Could we be due for a pullback after this recent rally that we've seen? Those questions and more will be answered on this week's Investing with IBD podcast episode, which we're about to go record here shortly, and it will drop tomorrow. We have a new episode every Thursday, so make sure you're heading to investors.com/podcast for all the details on that. We'll have Chris as well as Justin on the show talking about how to play stocks during earnings season.
Yeah, we're avalanche of earnings reports starting this week, and next week's going to be very busy. So
that's right. And speaking of, Netflix reported its results just after the close, and the early reaction to those numbers down about 11%. The stock is in the early going.
And that looks like pretty heavy volume too, so we'll see what the after hours session looks like, but shares are down sharply. Yeah,
it looks like a miss on their global paid subscribers. So I know our team is covering that, so we'll get further insights for you on investors.com very shortly, so make sure you are heading there for all the latest stock news and analysis. And you can also check out our content in our newsletters, so make sure if you haven't already signed up that you do so now. You can head to investors.com/newsletters for all the details on that. All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow.